Hello and welcome to a new episode of The Studio with me, Nick Church. When I post images online, I'm often asked by photographers, how did I get to that final image from the straight out of camera version? So what post-processing steps did I use? What tools, what platforms did I use to do that? And I thought I'd do a short video which just walks through all of those things with this single image. Now this image is a good example because it uses bits of Lightroom and there's bits in Photoshop as well. This venue is the Roman Baths in the city of Bath in the UK. So while it's a fantastic place to have a photo shoot after the wedding, there's a few problems with the baths which I can best show with the straight out of camera version of the image. So we've got loads of tourists around for a start, and also depending on the weather, you don't get sometimes too much steam coming off the water. Sometimes you do, sometimes you don't. So I've added that in afterwards. All right, now with the people, you can control it a bit, so we can see that I've managed to keep people away from the main area, but it's just impractical to be able to clear this entire place of people. There's people at the top here, people on the side, and actually it wouldn't be really fair to do that because these are tourists, they've come in, they've paid good money to look around the baths, and to have their visit interrupted would be a bit unfair. So here's the straight out of camera version of the image. This is the raw file. Now, when we're talking about workflows, especially when Photoshop's involved as well, it's worth pointing out at what point you decide to stop working in Lightroom and then move into Photoshop. And I personally use Lightroom as much as possible before I need to go into Photoshop because it's faster, it's much more efficient for me to use a single platform to run through hundreds of images and then go into Photoshop for the bits that Lightroom just can't do, which is typically adding things like steam and things like that. Lightroom just can't do that. All right, so the first step I did was to put in my preset, and this is what dials in my tones and my colors, my curves, to get that looking like one of my images. So that's the preset added in. Now the next thing I noticed is that because I was using a quite wide angle lens, I think it was 35, then the verticals are a little bit leaning in, so we've got some geometric distortion there, and again that can be really easy fixed in Lightroom. You can do it in Photoshop, but if you can do it in Lightroom, it's much quicker before you go into Photoshop. Right, so that's the image with a preset and nice and square and geometrically correct. The last problem we've got is, as we can see, we've got lots of people here. All right, now, as I said, again, I could go into Photoshop and I'd arguably have more powerful tools to remove people in Photoshop, but I've got pretty good at doing this in Lightroom and using the heal tools that Lightroom provides to get pretty much the same quality. And for me, if I'm doing hundreds of these, I want to use the platform that's going to get me to that good enough quality where couples just aren't going to realize there was ever anything there in as quick a time as possible, so I can focus that spare time on editing other images for them and making sure that I put the right amount of work into all those other ones as well. So we can see we've got people down here. Now if I go to the healed version of this in Lightroom, so you can see I've been able really successfully to remove everybody in this image that was getting in the way. I've left this person in because she looks like she was part of the original scene from Roman times, so I thought that was quite a nice thing to leave in. Now you do get some artifacts. If we zoom into this area and put those people back in, behind the people, if you look around the archway, you can see a little bit distortion, and similarly up by the balcony area where these people are, you can't replace it with the stuff that was behind it because you can't see it. So it's not quite right, but that's because we are looking at it in a comparison to the original. So we can see that where those people were, and we can see that things haven't been 100% perfect. But if you're faced with that image, you would never know there were people there. And there's nothing in this image now that anyone would pick up as being corrected in Lightroom or people removed. Okay, so now we're going to move into Photoshop. So I'm just going to go edit in Photoshop, and let's bring that into Photoshop, and we'll walk through adding that steam in, because that's the only other thing that this photo has is the steam. And also if we go to the finished version, I replace the sky as well. So we're going to do that in Photoshop as well. Right, so we've got this image now loaded in Photoshop. Now I'm not going to go through all the steps click by click. I'm going to go through everything, but it's so you can see the sorts of tools I'm using and the effects we're creating. All of this stuff is covered in my Lightroom coaching sessions and also my Photoshop coaching sessions. So if you did want to see that detail and you'd like to work through some images of your own so you can do it yourself and we can do it together, then please get in touch and we can set that up. All right, so the first thing I'm going to do is I want to create a reflection because it was raining quite heavily and there's a bit of wind, so we just haven't got the calm reflection that I wanted. So I'm going to do that by creating a copy of that layer. Now, like everything else in Photoshop, there's about a bloody million ways to do the same thing. This is how I do reflections. If you've got a preferred way to do your reflections and it's better than this, then let me know. I'm always keen to learn new tools and to keep improving how I work as well. So I tend to create a duplicate of the layer, put the opacity down of that first layer to about half, and then go to the second layer, and I'm just going to flip it. I'm just going to turn that one on its head, and we'll see a reflected version, upside down version of that image. Obviously it's in the wrong place. So now I'm going to move it down so we've got that reflection in the right place. And that's why I put that opacity down to 50% so I can see both at the same time. So we want to move it down so that the join is at the right point, which looks like about there. So that's good for me. Put that one back to 100%. And all we need to do now is we've got the flipped one underneath. It's being hidden by the original at the moment, so we're going to create a mask on that one, and I'm going to create a brush, nice low flow, and I'm just going to brush into that mask so we can start to see the reflection coming through underneath. There we go. That's fine. Okay, that's all I'm going to do. That's all I want to do. I don't want to go too far with it. So I'm not going to work in a non-destructive way because it just makes the layers much more complicated. I would do when I did it first time, so I could always get back and change things. I'm going to work in a destructive way, and I'm going to flatten that image now. Right, so for Steam, what I'm going to do is just create a solid color layer of white, like that. And in the mask, I'm just going to add a filter for difference clouds, and that's going to create our smoke. Now, obviously that looks a bit too small and tight. The smoke's all too tight, so we're going to stretch that one out. So I've done a free transform on there, and I'm going to stretch this right out. That's probably about right. Now, we don't want it affecting the whole image. We just go back to see what we're doing. We don't want to affect the whole image, so we're going to go back to that mask, and I'm just going to get rid of all of I'm going to increase my flow a little bit now because I want to be a bit more heavy-handed here because I don't want any of the steam up here, and we actually don't want it too high at all. You don't want to be too precise about it. If you try and be too precise, it ends up just looking fake. So you kind of want to be a bit slapdash about it. That's fine. Okay, so that's the steam added. I made sure that I haven't got any steam over the couple because I don't want to obscure those. Don't want to obscure that area of the image. So again, I'm going to now merge those down so we have back to our single image. Next job is to replace the sky because the sky was very flat on this day. And so we don't want to put a crazy sunset in there because it's going to look insane. So that isn't going to fit. But what we want is just some texture in the cloud. And I think that one works pretty well for this image. So let's increase the scale a bit so it's not too brooding, but it just means we've got a bit of interest in the sky rather than it being just flat white. Okay. And you can see that adds a ton of complication to that, which is one of the reasons why I just try to merge things down in this example. Okay, so that's, for me, is a really good final image. And we can see that it hasn't taken long at all. It's taken me about 3 times long because I've been talking through it. So with practice, you can get really quick at doing all of the steps through here. And that's really important because I've got 300, 400, 500 images from this wedding to go through and edit. So I haven't got the time to spend hours and hours on each image. You have to be rapid and quick. And that's the other thing that the Lightroom and Photoshop coaching courses do offer, is not just the techniques, but ways to really improve your efficiency when you're working through lots of images at the same time, which wedding photographers, event photographers are often doing. So here's the image back now in Lightroom. Now, because we edited it in Photoshop from Lightroom by doing that right click, edit in Photoshop, it means that when you save it, it automatically comes back into Lightroom, gets added to your library automatically. So I haven't had time in this video to go through in loads of detail about each step. So if there's a question you've got or something you would like clarifying, please do leave a comment and I'll answer all of them. Also, please subscribe as well so you get notified of new videos as they come out. That's all for today, and I look forward to seeing you next time at the studio.